Tens of thousands of children across English-speaking Quebec are back in class this hour. They're returning to a new normal of masks, social distancing, and hand sanitizer. It is just the latest cohort of students to head back to class in the middle of this pandemic. Francophone schools in Quebec resumed last week, and two teachers from a high school northwest of Montreal did test positive after taking part in lesson preparation days. Officials ordered 20 staff members into quarantine and told students in grade 10 and 11 classes to stay at home until today. Well, we have to say it's situations like that that has our next guest worried. Paul Robichaud says it's why he's moving to his basement. He has underlying health conditions and he's worried his two girls could bring COVID-19 home from school. And Paul joins us right now in Montreal. So Paul, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we touched upon it a little bit, but I'm hoping you can expand on it for us, because here you are, you've decided to live separately from your daughters in your own home in order so that they can go to school. So could you share with us your reasoning for the decision?
So off the top, you said students are going back in Quebec to a reality of masks, but actually the masks are not mandatory in class. So this is the main problem, is that the government's back to school mandates are not, they're not taking into account the fact that Montreal is a COVID hotspot. So with different conditions in Montreal, we have to at least respect the latest guidelines from evidence, data, and science of what you should do to keep yourself safe from transmitting the virus, wearing masks, social distancing, good ventilation. And none of that is in place in the classes where my daughters are going back. So with my condition of asthma, so when I get a regular cold or regular seasonal flu, for me it turns into a 3-4 week ordeal where I'm coughing and wheezing and having trouble breathing, having trouble sleeping, uncontrollable coughing, that, you know, looking statistically, I'm relatively certain that if I catch COVID, because the disease is pretty new, so it's not fully understood by doctors. But I'm relatively certain that if I get that disease, I'm going to be at a high risk of having complications. Mm-hmm. So we made the decision that we tried everything. We tried letters to the school. We tried, the school board, the opposition politicians. We tried everything to get changes into the school, because I would love to send my daughters. They want to go back to school. They want to see their friends, but we need it to be done safely, where they're wearing masks, where they're distanced, where they could even give the option of an online learning to parents, but to get online learning, you have to qualify with certain very specific medical conditions, and I don't qualify. So we're left really with no choice.
Mm-hmm. And I guess part of the issue, too, is that as you are trying to raise your concerns with officials in Quebec, you're seeing other jurisdictions where parents seem to have more options than the options being given in your province. Talk to us a bit about that.
So if you look at some other jurisdictions, it seems like over the summer, the school boards and ministries of education, governments took the time to really look at what could be done to keep the kids as safe as possible. And they've given certain options that we don't have here in Quebec. So in Quebec, it seems like the evidence is not being looked at, is not being taken into account. It's like there's a big social experiment going on, and all of our children are being thrown into the class with lesser measures than we have in the rest of society right now during this pandemic. And there's some of the assumptions that are used to justify those measures are not based on any evidence or science.
Mm-hmm. So how do your daughters feel about going back to school then? You are obviously taking an extra measure to protect yourself, but they are actually going back into these buildings, into two separate schools, we have to point out, because of their age difference. How do they feel right now?
So my younger daughter is devastated. So she just wants to stay home because she knows that if she goes into school, they left this morning. So I was able to hug them and say, have a good day at school, honey. And then they went off. But when they come home, we're going to have to be socially distanced, right? So she's devastated that she can't cuddle with her dad and give me a hug and or a kiss before going to bed, right? The last 3 days have been very intensive hugging and kissing to try to stock up, because when she starts going in the school, she will no longer be able to do that. My older daughter's school, though, at least the governing board at that school sent an accompanying letter with the back to school letter, and the governing board came out and said, we believe masks should be mandatory everywhere in schools inside. But that's not binding, right? So because of the mandates of the government, it was a lot of language about should. We believe they should be mandatory. So hopefully a lot of parents in my older daughter's school, the high school, will listen to that. In her case, masks are mandatory for everybody in the hallways and common areas at least. So there'll be less risk when she's on her way to class. But we have to, at the end of the day, we have to hope that other parents will send their kids to school with masks to wear in class all day. And if not, we'll need to assess what we do as our next step.
Well, let me pick up on there because we're quickly running out of time. And you talk about how difficult this is for your daughter. I can imagine it's going to be difficult for you as well to be in the same home but not being able to hug your own children. What if this all proves to be too difficult for your family, not only emotionally and psychologically, but, for example, in terms of health-wise? What if this is all too difficult? What are you going to do then?
So if it starts to look like there's not going to be any changes. So we're hoping that, off the top, this is the way we start off, and then that the government will see the error of the ways and make some changes. Or we really hope this doesn't happen. But if kids start to get sick and then schools start to close down, there may be pressure for stronger safety measures. And then hopefully this won't last that long. But if it looks like it's going to continue and there's no additional measures put in place, then we'll have to look at other options. Like, we have to try to pursue, I don't know, we're really not there yet. We both work full time, so we can't homeschool, but we'll have to look at something because I agree that it's not a situation that we can sustain as a family. I don't want to be in that position of being social distanced in my own home. I want to have the choice to make a choice for my own family's safety, and that choice is not being given to me right now.
Paul, we appreciate the time and you sharing your story with us today. Best of luck with the road ahead.
Thank you very much.
And that's Paul Robichaud, father of 2 girls who returned to school today in Montreal.